Hey, everybody. Welcome back to the Near Memo. Today, we've got a great group of panelists to talk about LSAs and LSA adjacent issues. Back with us is Eric Levine. We've also got Claudia Tomina, Crystal Horton, and Matt Casady. And of course, as always, the lovely and talented Mike Blumenthal. I just love saying that. Did I say it was episode 246? I hope I did. Okay. Anyway, so Mike, why don't you tell us why we're doing this? We just had Eric for a 2-part podcast episode, and now we've got him back with this group of esteemed panelists. What's the genesis of this?
I felt Eric is new to the industry, so one, I wanted to be sure he had a good platform, but I wanted to also provide that platform to others. I'm curious about LSAs. I see them as really a very strong play by Google and local as a pay-to-play avenue. And I am just curious from the point of view of agencies, how you make money with it, what, things you can do that can set you apart. And I wanted to give other agencies some presence in that. And I also want to give them a chance to grill poor Eric because he used to work at Google so he can uncover all their dirty laundry. Although, as we learned in the last one, he's very circumspect. So you're going to have to really needle this poor schmuck to get some good juice out of him.
Yeah.
Yeah. You could just like treat Eric like a whistleblower, and this is like congressional testimony.
Yes, that's right.
Okay.
And
All
your
right,
relationship with Epstein?
No, there's none of that, of course. So Eric, for people
Asking
that didn't
for a friend.
For people that didn't see the first 2 installments or our initial interview with you, why don't you just give a little bit of background about your history at Google and with LSAs for context, and then we can jump in.
Yeah, absolutely. So I worked at Google for about 6.5 years. I started summer of 2019, and I came on during the law pilot. So this was, summer 2019. And so we were cold calling lawyers, trying to get them to try Google's newest ad product, local services ads. And we've just seen like a lot of evolution. So I helped the rollout on the go-to-market side with like healthcare and with the global expansion. And then, more recently, I launched Leadwise HQ about 3 months ago, almost to the day. And now we help multi-location operators and we help other agencies manage LSAs and really sort of navigate Google's ever-changing landscape.
Okay, and do you guys want to say anything about yourselves? Since, I assume most people are going to know you and know your agencies, but do you want to introduce yourselves at all?
Please do. Matt, Crystal,
Sure.
Claudia, take a moment.
Yeah, Matt Casady from Sterling Sky. I help our clients. I'm an account manager and strategist and also help our clients with LSAs. I'm kind of the in-house LSA guy, so to speak. And just been passionate about LSAs since about 2020. I've been super fascinated with how they work. So, yeah.
And I'm Claudia Tomina with Reputation Arm, and I work with a lot of multi-location brands, managing Google business profiles, listings management, review management, often get sucked into LSA discussions because we're managing for the brand at whole. And
I'm Crystal Horton, a Platinum Google Business Profile Product Expert and a managed partner with Local Services.
Okay, great. So Mike, why don't you jump in with your...
Sure. So I've been following fraud on Google for many, many years. I am just curious from each of your perspectives, how much fraud, and LSAs has a long history. First, it was brought out to be fraud proof. It was very difficult to get a profile, and Google found that didn't scale very well. And then it was full of fraud. Anybody could get an LSA and everybody used it to cheat. And subsequently, about a year ago, it integrated more tightly with GMB and GMB's verification process. So I'm curious how much fraud you see in the product these days, both on the side of illicit listings and also fraud
reviews.
on click fraud, if there is click.
Yeah, absolutely. So while it was there, like quite a bit of like review fraud. And I think that probably still happens to this day. There's only so much that Google can do to try to figure out whether reviews are legitimate or not. And then when you're dealing with such volume, no matter how sophisticated Google's tech is, it's really tough to catch bad actors, but bad actors do get caught. There was an initiative in the law vertical called IDV, Identity Verification, which came about I think we believe because of fraud, where essentially people have to upload a copy of their driver's license in order to prove that they are who they are. So not just that you have a bar number and that your name is John Smith on the bar website, but you actually have to show your ID. And then, yeah, as Mike brought up, the business affiliation, where the link between the Google Business Profile and LSA, Google Business Profile has to be verified. All the information has to be super consistent. And yeah, and then there's always like notorious verticals. I think like the advanced verification vertical is pretty notorious for that. Garage door locksmith, stuff like that. Especially, also with the review gaming as well. But yeah, I'm curious to hear from your guys' perspective as well, what you guys have seen.
Do you
I mean,
guys
I'm
see
still
much fraud,
seeing,
Matt?
I still see fraud, and I would be curious if, like, kind of changing the question a little bit, if anyone's had success getting the fraud removed or like reporting it, because I mean, in every case, like we've sent it up the chain through our LSA rep, and like with anything with Google, it's like, okay, thanks for the feedback. We'll send it up the chain, and like it, nothing ever. The listing's still there a few weeks later, and it's like, okay, or even months. But so I'm curious if anyone's had success actually getting those removed, because we still see it. Like you said, Eric, we see it in the garage door space where, our client has the darndest time getting verified, and yet there's several fake listings in their market that's like obviously fake that are live. Or you see like the lawyers that are the disability lawyer who's serving multiple states, and it's like clearly lead gen, not a legit listing. But yeah, that's our experience with it.
I agree. It's definitely tough, Matt, especially in the garage door space where it's almost 18 plus months to get past that advertiser or advanced verification, showing proofs of vehicle registration, documents of proof with the government. And then yet these lead gen companies pass no problems within 3 months. They have a fancy LSA account that's generating over 300 leads a month. So what I've found to take down companies like that is if they start overlapping between multiple LSA accounts. I report it through our managed partner. That's the best way that I've been able to get it taken down. Other than that, we have to go through the Google Business Profile side of things because the GBP is your source of truth. And so we have better luck when we work with Google Business Profile as opposed to LSA support.
So you do that through the forum or through support and then to the forum?
Through support, through the forum, wherever we will get a response through the redressal form, creating a case ID, anything that we need to do in order to just get some attention on it.
So it's usually based on the idea that this location is fake and that thus it needs to be removed and from the GBP and then subsequently gets removed from LSA. Gotcha.
That's
Yeah,
really smart.
Yeah, it's tough too because people will say, "Hey, my competitor, they're cheating. Look into them." That happens like a lot. So I think it's also tough from Google's perspective too, because competitors are constantly doing that to each other. We know that they'll call each other's ads and try to run their ad budgets up, but also like calling out frauds, that's like a big thing. And so, I mean, I would even tell people like, you know, not to not with it, but there's not much bang for buck trying to take competitors down. But yeah, it's tough. Google wants to take them down because it doesn't make Google look good when that happens. But it's trying to suss out. Sometimes it's a lot of he said, she said, and it can be really, really tough to figure out who's legitimately committing fraud and who's not. And then is Google going to be paying somebody to be investigating that full time? Because it would be thousands, probably tens of thousands of cases either per month or per year that they would have to be looking into. So fraud is really, really tough. It's got to be super, super explicit that somebody's clearly violating the policies that you could see externally before they even took a look at it.
But there isn't any, like in GBP, there's this process, right? You can report it on maps and then you report it through the redressal form. Then you get a case number. Then you can escalate it. Then you can actually, through the forms in GBP, escalate it so that a human or some facsimile of a human might look at it, and then you might be able to go back and say that, oh, I have additional proof, and they look at it again. And sooner or later, if you have a legitimate case, although it may take 2 or 3 or 4 attempts, it's very frustrating, but at least there's a path. It doesn't sound like there's even a pathway that is open and available to agencies other than, as Crystal noted, through her top tier company that she's doing business with.
Yeah, I can't remember the exact percentage of people who have dedicated support on LSA, but I want to say it's less than 10%. Might be less than 5%. And so yeah, so it's really limited. LSA is just limited in general. LSA and Google Ads they share some things like access and security and billing and stuff, but it's a separate platform, separate teams. And even though it's all Google, things are kind of separate. But yeah, it is tough.
So let's just refresh everybody on the sort of ranking factors that are most important for the top LSA position. So you've either got 2 or 3 that show up, and we talked about this when we had you on before. But for the people that didn't see that, why don't you just kind of lay those out for everybody?
Yeah. So the top 3 ranking factors are the 3 R's. So that's usually what I start with. Reviews. So both quality and quantity of reviews. People typically ask like, how many reviews should I have? What is a good number of reviews? And it's going to be based on your competition. So if on average, you're in the plumbing space, it's very competitive. And on average, the top 10 people have over 1,000 reviews. That gives you a good idea about where you kind of stack up. And so that's reviews. Then there's radius. So
Well,
that's
you mentioned quantity there or quality of the review. Could you be a little more explicit about that?
Good follow-up.
Yeah, absolutely. Quantity of reviews, so total number, and then
That's
the
obvious,
quality.
right? Big number, more than your competitor. Okay. What's quality mean?
So like the numbers, like 4.9 stars.
It's the star rating.
Star rating.
There's no investigation of the text or anything like that, right? It's just purely volume and star ratings.
So that's a little bit complicated because, from an SEO standpoint, from a Google Business Profile standpoint, responding to reviews and some of those SEO basics improve Google Business Profile. And if LSA is pulling signals from Google Business Profile, if they have a very, very close relationship, then there's a chance that they are also pulling those intent signals that GBP is saying, this business has good review
engagement or whatever.
100%. And so, yeah, so a lot of people ask like, what is the link between SEO and LSA? And there is some overlap, but Google's not explicit, that this equals this. But yeah, so that's the review side. Radius is the actual areas inside the profile and budget that you target. And then there's responsiveness. So how often you answer the phone. And responsiveness is a little bit finicky sometimes because just because you answer the phone, a lot of people say, the phone will ring 3 or 4 times, and then we have an automated service on the 3rd or 4th ring will answer the phone automatically to make sure that it doesn't go to voicemail. And so, that can be good. So your responsiveness rate is high. But if people are clicking on you, if customers are clicking on you because it's just taking too much time, the phone has been ringing for a minute or a minute and a half before a human or anybody's actually answered the phone, that's not good. But yeah, those are the top 3 ranking factors that Google uses.
I have a question. If somebody's brand new, like you're adding on a new franchisee, is there like a certain number of reviews that they should have before you start onboarding them to LSA?
So there's a minimum threshold. Most verticals, the minimum is 5 reviews that you have to have. But again, what I typically tell people is, you got to look at the competition in the area. If you are a painter in rural Iowa and, on average, people have 20, 40, 50 reviews, then if you have 5 to 10 reviews, you're in the neighborhood proportionally. And as long as you're continuing to get reviews over time, there are other things that you can do other than getting reviews, by having, a wide service area, by answering the phone, by opting into the other CTAs like messaging and booking. So there are other things that you can do, but you also have to know that from like a user experience standpoint, somebody's going to look, when you see a restaurant that has 5 5-star reviews and another restaurant that has 1,000 4.7-star reviews, from like a user experience, if you have more reviews, you're going to appear as more trusted. So to your question, like how do you kind of get it going? There's a couple things you can do. You can just have the LSA run and continue to try to get reviews over time, but you got to come back to set expectations with the client to let them know, like, hey guys, this is where you stack up against the competition. Reviews is a really important ranking factor to Google, also to customers who, are trying to find out how trustworthy that you are. So yeah, it's a little bit of you got to kind of build it up while you're doing it, but it's not just reviews that impact ranking.
So piggybacking on Claudia's question, unless you have a follow-up, Claudia. Okay, so piggybacking on that question, I'd be curious to know how many leads actually come through like I don't know what we call it. We would call it otherwise the local finder in an organic context where you click on more businesses and you see additional listings beyond the top 3, and then you scroll and may interact with those. We see that in our research, we see that behavior sort of vary by category. Mostly what people are doing is choosing from the visible listings, which would include, in an LSA context, the top 2 or top 3, depending on the category and the platform. Is anybody coming through the more I forget what the button says, more businesses or whatever. So below the top 3, do leads actually come through those, or is it always the top listings?
So I did a very biased user experience study with my parents, asking them we did a search for painters. And I said, I want you to find the best painter here. And so she's looking through and she goes, this one. She picked the second one. And I said, why'd you pick that? She goes, it just looked good. And I said, would you look through more? Like you said, would you go to the next page? How long would you take to search through all these? And she said, well, I'm not an expert at exterior painting, so I don't even know what I am comparing. So I always kind of laugh at that, which is like, well, people like, we want to compare plumbers or we want to compare, personal injury lawyers. If you're not a personal injury lawyer, what are you comparing? Like, genuinely, are you looking at reviews or, are photos of a law firm telling you that this lawyer, because they have good photos, is going to deliver me more money for the car accident that I was in? So yeah, it's tough.
Well, so is that a statement that people generally do not click through to the additional businesses and choose from those that don't rank in the top 2 or 3?
People likely will click into it to take a look, but that's what I think the benefit of the feature, like the get a quote feature, is because really, top 3, top 4, top 5. Again, it doesn't really matter to me if I'm looking for a plumber. I have an issue in my house that I need resolved immediately. So the most important thing is, can I get somebody here quickly? Which means I'm going to send a note to everybody, to the top 4 or 5, and then I want a quote to make sure that it's not completely out of my price range.
But you don't have any internal data from your experience, anecdotal or otherwise. I mean, this kind of focus group of 1 is consistent with what we've seen in our research. But I was hoping that you had some sense that, of what actually happened, but you don't, it sounds like.
Like, as far as how
from your experience as a Google employee, like, where are a bunch of people clicking through and then choosing businesses lower down the list, being more selective or more thoughtful about it, or are they just sort of choosing from the top 3? I mean, our experience indicates that they choose from the top 3 basically most of the time.
Yeah,
sometimes they look at the others, but most of the time not.
Yeah, that's most generally the case.
Okay, so to go back to Claudia's question, then it's not even worth it. Then I would infer to do any LSA advertising at all, unless you're within striking distance of the top, in terms of review quality and quantity, the top competitors in that category. That you're just wasting your time and money.
If you do a search right now, you'll see that the order of rankings is not just that the highest reviews are at the top. So sometimes you'll see somebody that has 54 reviews that shows up at the top. Again, that's not how it looks. And then a lot of times what people will say is, my ad just won't show up at the top. I search for it all the time. It just never shows up at the top. When we drill down and go into the account, you look at absolute top impression share. It will show you percentage. And I say, hey, it says 25% of the 10,000 impressions that you got, a quarter of them, you were the number 1 result. So you absolutely are showing up at the top. Google is cycling through the rankings. So yeah, I still do think it is worth it, because the data is showing that you are showing up at the top a good percentage of the time.
Yeah, but as you said before, and then I'll defer to other people. If I'm a PI lawyer and in Los Angeles, California, and the top PI lawyers have 1,500 reviews, 1,700 reviews, and I've got 100 or 200 reviews. Is there any chance that I'm going to show up there?
Yeah, there's still a chance, because again, reviews is not the only thing that matters, right? If you're able to be agile, and let's say you have a big law firm and you have an intake team and you don't have messaging set up because the call intake team isn't set up to do that, and you're a smaller firm and you're able to opt into messaging and you do that, then you can compete like that. But yeah, I mean, even if you're a smaller, personal injury lawyer, I used to call them that the PI lawyers are advertising maximalists. They are the only people who advertise on buses, bus benches, billboards. Electricians don't put up billboards. So even if you are a smaller personal injury lawyer, to have the value of the digital real estate at the top of Google is still extremely important for you as a brand in order to get your brand out there.
The
What are
other
those
thing
ads?
to add,
Go
Greg,
ahead, Crystal.
When you are verified through the LSA, it shows a blue verified check mark on the Google business profile, and that helps as a conversion rate on the business profile through Maps. So whether or not you're showing up on LSA, it still benefits you.
That's a good point. Thank you. Mike, you were going to say
Oh,
something?
I was just curious what these how Google prices them, how they run, what is it, what's the variety across markets and verticals, and if there's any transparency in the pricing. I know originally it was fixed pricing and moved to some sort of bid system. I'm curious about, and so in the end, in a big market, PI lawyer, what are they paying for an LSA ad?
Yeah, so it varies. There's actually a cost tool on the local services website. You scroll about halfway down. You put in how many leads you want per month, what zip code you're in, and then it'll give you like what the average range is. And it'll give like a 20 to 10 to $30 range, something like that. PI law in the more competitive verticals, and I'd be curious. I mean, Matt, Crystal, Claudia, what you guys see as well. But $150. I mean, yeah,
Yeah.
it's pretty brutal, but the auction does cause the price to continue to drive up, and there are people who are just willing to have their budgets set at, I want $10 million worth of leads per week, even though they would never get that. So yeah, the auction on that is going to continue to stay high. And then we see that that's like one of the biggest pieces of feedback we get is that the prices on LSA have continued to go up and up and up.
I have a question in regards to that. So let's just say it's super competitive, like your personal injury lawyer. It's like super competitive. I mean, and you say, okay, I'm going to try it, and your budget has to be at least $2,500 to $3,000. And then you try it, and then the client's like totally disappointed because they're not getting any quality leads, or they weren't able to close. I mean, at what point do you tell your client, all right, your market's way too competitive? Do you ever do that? Have you found yourself in a situation where you say, I don't even recommend LSA for you?
Absolutely. All the time. I rather set expectations with the client and let them know and be honest versus make 2 to 3 months worth of fees from them and then have them get pissed off and have them tell us that we didn't set expectations with them. Absolutely. And yeah, I tell them that it's brutal and that it's very, very different from Google Ads. Google Ads, it's a little bit more straightforward. This is how much you pay in order to show up at the top. LSA is a lot different. It's more complicated. Responsiveness, reviews. Those are things that are, again, those top 3 ranking factors. Of those top 3, 2 of them, if I'm managing your LSA, I'm not in control of your reviews. I'm not in control of how you're asking for reviews, whether you're responding to them. And I'm definitely not in control of how your lead intake team is answering the phone. So the top ranking factors actually aren't even in control of people who are managing the ad. Yeah, when you think about it. So definitely it's an expectation setting game with the client to let them know. If LSA, matters a lot to them, then, being able to kind of take that worry off the table for them to say, hey, we can manage it. But if they're not having a good experience, so I see this a lot in the healthcare space. There are a lot of high value businesses in the healthcare space that are not primary care doctors. So for example, like pain management clinics, they make a ton of money and they are constantly looking for, constantly trying to advertise on LSA, but there isn't a category for pain management. So I tell them, hey, guys, it's not close for you. The lead quality that's going to come in is going to be people searching for, physician near me, primary care near me. So I tell them, do not do this. You guys are going to have a bad experience. And I've got more positive feedback from that. I've gotten referrals from people being like, yeah, he was honest about this. We can't do it, but you should meet with him because these other guys do something that will fit with LSA.
So that raises a question about negative keywords. Is that something that Google will ever introduce into the system, sort of in the same way that it exists in PPC, so you can avoid those kinds of primary care when that's not really what I do?
So that was a huge piece of feedback that we would get. But as far as I know, I haven't heard anything about that. You can obviously do negative surface area targeting, but as far as negative keyword targeting, not that I know of.
I was going to say, I'm kind of going back to Claudia's question about like, if you're telling a client like this maybe isn't a good fit for you. Let's say you took over a new account and you're like doing your like quote unquote like best practices for that account. Like I have the things that we found that work best, but I'm curious from your end, like what, have you found, like, do you do like zip code versus county targeting? Are you going to like what are things that you're going to do? Like what bidding modes? What would you define as like best practices for a new account or for an account that's like struggling and you're trying to, improve it?
Yeah. So it's tough. At Leadwise HQ, what we do is we have essentially like a custom scoring engine that we built. So we put different like weights on the way different like profile and budget settings are set. And then that gives us like a baseline score. And then we make recommendations against that. And so like from a high level, what we look at is verification status. We look at surface area configuration, and then we look at the bid mode that you're using. We also want to know like what's happened in the past. Did you guys used to have accounts in the past? Another agency have this and the account got suspended? Like, kind of want to know a little bit about the history. That's going to indicate some things. Responsiveness rate. If they go, they just tried some new AI tool and it messed up the responsiveness rate. And so we tell them, yeah, it's going to take a little bit of time of consistently answering the phone in order to improve that. But yeah, so we look at all those things, but it's tough because it really is case by case. A law firm versus a plumbing business is gonna vary widely. LSAs are to a degree set it and forget it a bit. The issue and where the expertise comes in is in the infinite edge cases. And that is really what makes or breaks what I think is somebody who's like a competent, LSA ad manager, is being able to recognize all those edge cases and be able to apply it to a specific client. So you may say that, messaging and booking, that has to be opted into this client, and the client tells you, we can't do that. So you have to come up then with some, custom ways and some other things that they can do in order to make sure that the account is doing the best they can up against their business structure. So for whatever reason, they can't do messaging. So it's like, okay, so we have to think about some other things. I might also want to kind of audit and figure out how are they asking for reviews, right? Some of the things that aren't on the LSA side that I don't have control over, but that I know is going to impact how well their LSA performs, I'm going to want to ask them about that. Same thing about like the lead intake. I'm going to want to ask them, how is it set up? Do you guys have somebody answering the phone 8 hours a day and then it goes to a call center? How often are you auditing that call center? Do you guys ever secret shop and call them at 1 o'clock in the morning? So LSA is like a golf score. It's a whole bunch of different factors. And then what we've done, like at our agencies, we've added some weighting and some scores to that, so that we can create a baseline and then set expectations with the clients. Hey, here's how we would set it up. Here's where you're at. And then just being honest with them about, essentially, what's going to happen to the best of their ability.
So related question, what did you consistently see people doing wrong when you were at Google? Like what was the big 1 or 2 top mistakes that people consistently made in managing LSAs?
So is this like agencies or just how profiles were set up?
Well, for both. You could answer for both.
Yeah. So for just how like accounts are set up, a lot of people don't know what the best practices are. For like a long time, trying to read the LSA help center and extract from the help center based on all this information in the help center, how should my ad look? It's like very kind of difficult to suss out exactly what it means.
Well, now you can use Gemini for that or ChatGPT, right?
Yeah, you can't. But even Gemini and ChatGPT will say, be sure to dispute leads. And I'm like, there's no more lead disputes. Like it's clearly not reading, the right sources. So that's the other part that's a little scary, is trying to rely on what you think may be true, which is why expertise is so important. So yeah, that's the other thing. Maybe just a disclaimer is like, be careful what Gemini says about LSA ad management. It is unreliable, and I cannot put a finer point on that. That it makes stuff up, and I'm like, oh, you're lying. This is not. I mean, selfishly, I'm like, this is great for my business because it makes LSA expertise even more valuable. But yeah, so and then how agencies manage it. So for individual businesses, make sure you have best practices opted in. It's difficult to figure out what that is. There's a lot of podcasts and blogs and stuff that people write about that. And then for agencies, obviously, you have to make sure best practices are established, but the number one most important thing for agencies to do with their clients with LSA is set expectations. You've got to understand the limitations of LSA. If your clients are used to Google Ads and pay-per-click, you need to understand that there's a massive difference between how LSAs operate and how PPC operates. You cannot just pay your way to the top like you could with Google Ads. The importance of the SEO part of things, which is, again, that's answering the phone, the reviews and all that stuff. So yeah, that's the number one reason that people churn from agencies, is they feel like the agency either lied to them or failed to set expectations. So yeah, for both categories.
How do each of you bill for LSA services? I'm curious.
Like how much do we charge? So it's case by case. So for like smaller businesses with fewer locations, we charge a little bit more. For bigger, we charge a little bit wider. As we just
monthly management fee is what? or
Sure. Yeah.
something similar?
Yeah, absolutely. But we're also like, we're trying a whole bunch of different models to kind of see what works, because it's not, I don't know, maybe with Google Ads, it's a little bit easier. People typically will do like a percentage of ad spend. LSAs, it's a little bit different, but I have talked to so many different agencies and so many people managing it, and everybody seems to do it slightly differently. But yeah.
How about you guys, Matt?
Yeah, we do.
Crystal?
We have two different plans basically that are ongoing. So one is like more of a consulting where we're doing ongoing optimizations and testing of the account, and then we have a managed plan, which is basically the same thing, but on top of that, our team, with the client's permission, is also reviewing each of the calls. Where possible, adding client information, marking leads as booked, rating them, and so forth. So both for ongoing options. We also do LSA audits, one-time audits, but yeah, typically the monthly consulting or management.
So we've moved away from percentage and strictly to a flat fee, no matter ad spend.
And how about you, Crystal?
It's a monthly management fee that includes consultation, reporting, optimization, and lead management. I have seen some agencies charge a percentage, which has actually been successful for them. I've also seen other agencies that charged per lead. That type of model has sort of shut down their department because LSA doesn't just work based off of leads that way. And then I've seen others that include it in their platform, where if they're managing Google Business Profile, they'll just include it. I've also seen other agencies that are more Google Ads focused on pay-per-click. And so they also just include LSA into that fee as well. So it's structured in many different ways.
And is it still, originally this product was brought out to be a DIY product. Is it still a DIY product, or do the many vagaries and algorithmic impositions create a world in which no individual business can really know how to do this?
Yeah, I guess it varies how much you want to do it yourself. There are some people who are plumbers who are like really interested in advertising, and they actually like it, and they like being into the nitty gritty of how their money's being spent. They want to have a real close eye on it. And then there's other people who are like, I cannot be bothered. We want more leads, but the dream for us is for somebody to just call us and say, show up at 123 Main Street, and we just want to do plumbing. So yeah, we've definitely seen all versions.
I'm kind of changing subjects, so if you want to go ahead. So you said no more disputing. There's no disputes. I just want to clarify. So you tell your clients, don't ever dispute a lead, no matter how bad of a lead it was.
You cannot do that. So they removed the dispute feature. So inside the lead, when you click into a specific lead, in the top right, there was a little menu bar. You'd click it, and it used to say dispute. You'd click it, and it'd say dispute in progress. Now, when you go in there and you click on it, it says lead. So you click on it, and then it gives you a survey. Very satisfied, not satisfied, completely dissatisfied. An extremely small percentage of the time when you click extremely dissatisfied, Google may give you an ad credit back, but I tell people to be very, very cautious of that. Some people will use that feature as a dispute feature. And essentially what you are doing is you are training Google to say, hey, for all these searches that people are doing, and then that turned into leads, I'm not satisfied with any of them. So Google is going to send you fewer and fewer and fewer of those, because what Google cares about is making sure that the customer gets their problem solved. So if you're constantly telling Google, I'm not able to solve this customer's problem over and over and over again, they're gonna pull you down, because essentially you're not able to solve their users' problems.
Okay, so can I ask another question? So this is really interests me, because restoration companies, there's not a mold category. People just know mold is associated with a restoration company. So, but a lot of restoration companies don't do mold. They just do water and fire restoration and have nothing to do with mold mitigation or it's a different license. So how should these restoration companies address that? Because they're getting mold leads, and maybe somebody searched restoration and then they got the mold lead that way. So how would you address that with your client?
So at the end of the day, to quote famous rapper, if it doesn't make dollars, it doesn't make sense. If the ROI is not there, it doesn't matter what category they're in. It doesn't matter what ad platform they're using. You have to advocate for your client. So if it's making money, but they're concerned because a percentage of the time, the lead quality that they're getting isn't good. That's it. You just got to ask them whether or not it's continuing to be worth it. As far as like, what are we supposed to do with bad leads that come in? Back to the expectation setting game. If you're in the restoration category, is that the name of the category? It's I think it's got another name, right?
I mean, usually the primary category is water damage restoration.
Got it. So yeah, so like for water damage, the vast majority of searches in that category are going to be for the broad category. They're going to be for water damage. So let's say you go into their profile and budget, and one of the toggles, like what's an example of one of the job types that's in there?
Like flood.
Flood. Okay. Yeah. So let's say like flood damage or something like that. I can't remember exactly what that is. Let's say they have flood damage turned off, and they're getting leads for flood damage, and they go, "Hey, Claudia, why am I getting calls for flood damage? I thought we had that toggled off." What you basically have to tell them is that, like, hey guys, out of 10 searches that people are doing for like water restoration near me, 8 or 9 out of 10 of those searches are going to be for water damage near me. So that's what somebody does a search for. Their ad shows up because they're in that category. And then when they get on the phone, they say, "Hey, we're looking for flood damage." And the client still, like, ostensibly, they still want to show up for water removal for that category. But yeah, we just have to like set the expectation with them that like they still showed up for that search and that is a valid lead because they're in that category. But back to the expectation setting part of that. And we actually see that a lot more in the personal injury law space because not a lot of people know what a personal injury lawyer does. Like if you were to ask 10 people on the street, what does a personal injury lawyer do? I don't know if 10 out of 10 people would be able to tell you. Maybe half would, which means that about half the time when somebody picks up the phone for a PI lawyer, they're may or may not be accurate. And they say, "Hey, I got bit by a dog." And they go, "Well, we had dog bite turned off." The search that was done that triggered their ad was personal injury lawyer in Dallas. That lawyer that serves Dallas still technically wants to show up for that lead. Yeah. The only time you would ever have recourse is, so let's say back to the water damage example, you had flood damage turned off. If you can take a screenshot on Google search where somebody types in flood damage, professional near me, and you see your client's ad show up, if you take a screenshot of that, that is something that you could like action against because your ad shouldn't show up for that query because you had it toggled off. But in general, vast majority of searches are going to be through that broad.
I have any more questions about sort of bad leads and managing bad leads? No? Okay, I have a question about the multiple quote scenario, right? That's going to 4 people. If you check that box, it'll go to a total of 4. Your initial one and then 3 others. Is that right?
Yes, I believe it messages the top 4 results.
So that was the question. The question is, where do those other lead sources come from? I mean, where do those other firms come from? Are they just the top 4 in order, or is there some other consideration?
I believe it's the top 4 in order. Yeah. But somebody else might be able to confirm that, but yeah, it should be the top one.
Okay. I can keep going. Okay. Claudia, Crystal, Matt, do you have other questions that you want to ask?
I'm curious about that one. Is how does it get billed?
Right.
I believe everyone is charged. So
Full amount.
Yes.
Whatever it
yes.
is.
Yeah, I was just going to say, we loved that internally when, you referenced it in your first chat, Eric, that, it used to say half off for leads, and conveniently Google took the half off discount right around the time that they started rolling out the, get multiple opinions. So now I think the help center basically says it's based on like likelihood of their converting. So it basically Google pick and choose how much to charge you for it. Yeah. We've seen it's not, definitely not half off anymore, but yeah, that timing was.
Do you have any visibility into how those sort of others perform? When somebody says, "I'm looking for these additional leads," do you have any sense from your time there whether people are actually contacting those, or they perform equally well, or there's some, lesser performance?
Yeah, I mean, it's going to be case by case, right? So if you need a plumber, you only need one plumber to come over. So
it's going to be the first.
It's going to depend. If it's super urgent, you may not care about the price and you just want somebody to come over now. If you're like looking for a locksmith, literally, I need to get into my house or I need to get into my car. That's the most important thing. I really don't care how much it costs. If you're doing something like, let's say, a home remodel, like, a few percentage points difference in price is going to make a big difference. And it's also not urgent. So that you may take more time. You may even reach out to more than 4 people in order to get even more feedback to make sure about how you balance that. But really, the reason that Google made that change to the message multiple is because, I think we talked about this last time, is because they're really just mimicking the user behavior anyway, right? If somebody needs a locksmith right now because I'm locked out of my house, I'm going to message as many people as humanly possible, and I need somebody to get back to me. And then similar thing with like a bathroom remodel. Like, I really want to make sure that I'm not paying 2-3 grand more when there's like absolutely no need to. When the top 2 people, one guy has 1,500 reviews, another person has 1,200 reviews. So yeah, it's just more about them meeting customers where they were.
And conveniently, Google makes more money.
If you charge twice as much, you make twice as much money. It's pretty smart.
This is 4x. This is not 2x. This is 4x.
That's it. Yeah.
So we've been talking for a while. I want to be mindful of the time here for everybody. Can you review? You talked in our previous interview about image photography and image best practices for LSAs. Why don't you just kind of go over the highlights of that? What are some of the things that people really need to pay attention to with images?
So,
and do they impact performance, ranking, conversions?
yeah. So what Google will say as far as best practices is you need 4 to 6 high quality photos minimum on the ad. And like, you obviously have to have some photos. And I believe they actually even used to have a call out inside the profile and budget when you had no photos added. And they would say, adding photos increases conversion by 26%. And they actually used to cite a statistic. I'm not sure if they still do that, but so yeah, you need at least 4 to 6 high quality photos. And then really what you want to do is you want to demonstrate the user journey with the photos. So the best way to think about it is almost like Amazon product photos. So if you're going to buy like a new office chair, you essentially want to see how the chair works in action. You want to see how you sit in it, how it gets assembled and all that. For the local services example, let's say home services, like for a plumber or HVAC, the order in which I want to see the photos, the first photo is I want to see the truck in the driveway, so that as a person who called the plumber, I see, okay, it's going to be a blue van that pulls up. And then, gentleman walks up to the front. I want to see somebody in a white polo shirt with the logo of the brand. Then maybe the third photo is I see them, doing some work underneath the sink. And then maybe a 4th or 5th photo is either, other action shots if they do other things like electrical or something else. And then very last, or it's really almost not needed at all, is the logo of the business. A lot of times I'll see people put the logo first. And, you got to think from a customer's perspective. The logo of your brand is obviously very important to that brand, but it doesn't tell me that you are a good plumber. So yeah, so that's on the home services side. For lawyers, very similar. I want to, what is the user journey that somebody is going to go through? Let's say for like family law or estate law, where I'm going to actually walk into a lawyer's office. I want to see the outside of the building as the first photo. Right. So I see exactly where I'm going to pull up. Next, I want to see a picture of the front desk, and I can see where the receptionist is sitting. Then next, I want to see a picture of the conference room. And then after that, maybe a picture of the whole team. And then again, 5th or 6th or 7th down the line is the logo of the brand. But also, like, on average, people are really only looking at a couple photos.
Eric, is it relevant to like delete photos, or does it work against you if you delete photos?
No, it doesn't work against you, but just know, like, I've talked to some people who say, like, we upload a photo every week, so that Google knows, like, we have activity. Like, I would say, don't waste your time with that. By the time you get to 5, 6, after 10 photos, nobody's like cycling through 40 photos for your law firm. That's going to like be, oh, that was the photo that got me to convert. People aren't spending that much time.
So a question about service areas. So my recollection is that you were encouraging people to target as widely as possible. What would you say about service area targeting best practices? Is targeting a too wide an area, does that potentially dilute your ability to rank, or penalize or harm your ability to rank?
Specifically zip code versus county. That's what I want to know.
Gotcha. So inside the help center, it says that you should serve as wide as you can reasonably serve. So that's what it says in the help center. If you're targeting further than your technicians are able to drive, like, that's just not smart. You're going to lose leads. because they're just going to be too many miles away and nobody's going to want to travel there. So it's got to make sense for you in the home services space where people are actually driving to jobs. In the law vertical, you can target statewide and suggest that you do target statewide because if you have passed the bar in Texas, you're able to serve the entire state. As far as zip code versus county, that's really dealer's choice. Google gives you a whole bunch of different options because based on the type of business, they may have different service area like criteria. So if you're a franchise or like a real estate agent or something, they typically will have like particular kind of gang territory that they're not able to overlap with each other. And if it's based on county or if it's based on city, that's why they just give you the option to do that. But the most important thing is kind of what's covered in blue in the actual service area section, less whether it's this city versus this like zip code.
Okay, but Google will tell you to remove like overlaps. So what if your county is overlapping with your zip code?
So they won't tell you to remove service area overlaps in a single ad unit. So let's say you've got a zip code here, but then you've also targeted the county. That's not what they mean by overlap. By overlap, they mean two different businesses. So you've got chained businesses together. You just don't want to have two businesses overlap. They call that double serving.
Yeah.
I think what you're talking about, Claudia, is the duplicates that flag in the map where it says you've got 4 duplicates because your zip codes are being targeted under the county.
If you were like Matt's scenario, you're taking over an account or you've got a new client and they have an existing LSA program or they want to get into the LSA situation. Well, no, actually, let's just use it as the Matt's earlier example. You're taking over somebody who's run LSAs in the past. And you touched on this before, but let's be really explicit. What would be the first 2 or 3 things that you would do in auditing that account?
Yeah, I mean, so like what we talked about last time, it's going to like depend case by case. And like at Leadwise, what we do is very, very custom. It's extremely like secret sauce about how we do it because there are so many different things that go into it. But it's really on balance, like from a high level, verification status, like past history, what has happened to the account recently. That's probably like, most importantly, were we just suspended? What did an old agency create overlapping accounts and now we've got some sort of an issue? I would want to know like account history. Next thing I would want to look at the service area section. I've seen like service area bugs where people's service areas look kind of spotty. And I'll say, hey, how come this isn't more filled in? Or how come you haven't targeted more? And they say, well, we tried to, but there seems to be a bug. So I'd be like, okay, well, we need to file a bug for this. So I'd want to look at count history. Then I would want to look at service areas. And then, bid mode. We'd want to make sure that they're using the right bid mode. And then, photos as well. Like photos are small and it's, there really isn't like a particular guide for how photos should look. So I will click into the photos and I will, look at them like very, very intensely to make sure they're not too blurry, whatever that may be. But yeah, that's kind of how we do it.
Okay, I want to give you guys the opportunity to ask a question or compound question that you didn't hear an answer to, or that you didn't get to ask during the main part of this discussion. Is there something, some burning question that you have? Go ahead.
Yeah, I have a question on just kind of like the future of LSAs, Eric. Like, is there, first of all, do you see LSAs ever going away? Do you see like in like new verticals they're rolling out with? And then I know this is multiple questions in one, but like what features, if any, do you see being added like to LSAs?
Absolutely. So as far as the LSAs going away, I don't think that's going to happen. LSAs have been like pretty successful and pretty important to businesses. And so I personally don't see them going away. I see them integrating pretty well into like AI search. So when you ask Gemini, which plumber should I use? I take my phone and I, go through my house and I use the augmented reality in order to show me what the kitchen remodel would look like. And I say, okay, tell me how much it's going to cost. Here's what my budget is. Who are the people on search who are trusted, reliable, been in business for 20 years, who are within my price range? Show me the top 3, and then tell me what I should be comparing and what questions I should ask them when I get them on the phone or when I send that request to quote. So I see basically just like multi-step, these like high intent based questions, and then them basically like surfacing ads. And it could potentially be that they surface PPC ads, or they could surface LSAs, or they could surface like whatever it may be. So I don't see the LSAs going away. I also think that the verification, the blue check, the fact that if somebody's doing locksmith that they've passed a background check, like the structure and value of LSA, I don't see that going away. As far as new verticals, LSA, I think they have like over 100 verticals right now, and some of them are still in pilot. So, just like they've always done, my guess is they're going to continue to roll out more verticals, probably, try to see what works. But yeah, my guess is if it's still like makes sense to continue to expand. And then as far as new features, that's hard to say. That's hard to say. But one of the big, like more recent ones is the direct business search breakout, being able to see how much direct business search leads cost, why some of them are, charged a particular way. You're like, aren't those supposed to be free? Anyway, so some of the, just a little bit more drill down on the reporting side. But yeah, it's tough with LSAs. I think the team is sort of always trying to balance making it accessible to a small business owner. Like my dad, he's a general contractor. He could not use Google Ads. It would break his brain. But for local services ads, it's probably simple enough for him to set it up. So that's like the balance. If they add too many features and make it too complicated, like it's going to be Google Ads. So yeah, that's kind of the balance.
One quick thing about that, one of the ad types that ChatGPT previewed was an interactive ad where you could ask questions about the service within the ad. It had a chat feature. Do you see something like that being integrated into LSAs at some point in the future?
Yeah, that would be like ideal, is essentially like follow-up questions, right? So you're a personal injury lawyer. I would love if Google asked the lead a couple questions, similar to the questions my lead intake would ask. Like, I would love if Google could quickly ask a couple of those questions. Were you actually injured in a car accident? You search for personal injury lawyer near me. What's the actual like job type that you are looking for? You actually were bit by a dog. Okay, well then now we can actually filter out those people who don't have dog bite toggled on, and then we can pull in some of the like review sentiment and see these are the best dog bite attorneys in the area. And so I just see that the lead quality would go up just by asking a few follow-up questions. So yeah, that would be a dream feature.
Or Claudia's mold question, right? You could eliminate that.
Right.
Yes.
What are your thoughts on using AI tools for like LSA?
Expand on that a little bit. What do you mean by that?
There's like Broccoli AI for like LSA lead ratings and things like that. Have you ever tried anything in regards to an AI tool?
Yes, we've definitely been playing around with a few different AI tools. The sort of gap that I see is that no matter how useful the tool, you still have to have LSA expertise in order to sort of understand like what the edge cases are. Now, if you have something that's really good at like lead scoring, I could see that as being good because the business itself could train the AI to lead score. And so like I could see that being as really valuable. But yeah, as far as like some other like specific tools for LSA, it's pretty limited. Most of them I see like either certainly in the SEO space, and then a lot in the Google Ads space. But even that, I haven't, it's the reviews are still mixed on having LSA sort of do everything for you, sort of despite what LinkedIn and Twitter says that I've seen.
Crystal, what still is outstanding in your mind that we didn't get to talk about?
I think let's go back to direct business search where you type in the brand name, the LSA count shows up. They click on that. The prompt asks 1, if you're a customer, 2, if you're not. Based off of that, that's how it gets charged. Now that the reporting is showing direct business search, we are finding that more than 70% of those leads are getting charged full price, and there is no way to dispute that. So any advice on how to proceed that way?
Buy Google stock.
That's going to be tough. My guess is that it's probably pretty accurate. If Google is showing you what's happening, then my guess is that it's probably pretty accurate, and that people actually are pressing press 2 if you're a new customer. That's my guess, is people are probably pressing that. But yeah, to your point about 70%, that seems really high. That 70% of the time somebody's doing a direct search for that business, and then when they call, they go, "Yeah, I'm a brand new customer." Yeah, seems like kind of high, but yeah.
Maybe it's fraud. Maybe it's your competitors.
Or maybe it's good brand advertising. In the legal space, we see one of the primary considerations of people who click on LSAs is that they've heard about this company before, and it could be just a really effective brand campaign.
So it's an important point, I think, without going into too long a digression. I think this is my thesis. We're going to see more and more of Google usage be navigational or brand search over time because these informational queries or these comparison queries are going to be offloaded to ChatGPT or AI mode or someplace else, right? Or they're hearing about, they're on social media and they've heard about the brand and they want to look at reviews or whatever it is. And so they're doing this kind of validation, verification search on Google, but it's not this kind of initial discovery. And I think that will create more and more of the circumstance that Crystal's talking about, where you've got a name in mind and you're clicking on LSA because it's at the top of the page and it's just convenient for you.
Yeah.
Although I would contend, Greg, that Google is going to want to, desirous of controlling that whole funnel from AI down through the click on LSA. And if they find that they're losing too much to ChatGPT or TikTok, they're going to develop a product that brings those queries back in and drives.
Well,
the
I also said AI mode, right? So if somebody starts in AI mode and the LSA shows up in AI mode, then that's totally legit because they're saying I need to find a mold remediation company, and then they go down the funnel and they contact that. But if they're in AI mode and there is no LSA, or they're on TikTok and they come to Google, or they're on ChatGPT and they come to Google, which I have a lot of data that says when people do these local searches on ChatGPT, they then go to Google very often, in a lot of cases, because they're looking for the additional information that Google has that isn't as reliable or isn't present on ChatGPT. I think we're just going to see more of that behavior where the LSA is a convenient way to get more information about that particular business, as opposed to like, here are the 3 that I'm choosing from, that's my thesis.
Yeah, I think it's also going to depend a little bit about where you came from, and what your business is used to. So if you're used to showing up on organic and you're used to somebody doing a direct search for your business and your GBP comes up or your organic listing comes up, and then now LSA is basically taking that and charging for it. You go, LSA is now charging me for what used to be organic, versus let's say that you were heavy in PPC and somebody else was bidding on your brand term a lot, and you were in a brand battle for your own name, like quite heavily. With LSAs, you're the only one who can bid on that branded term, or you're the only one who can show up for that branded term. So that is, your best way to defend that top spot. So I think a little bit also depends on where you came from. If you were used to showing up organic and Google took that away, is now charging for it, versus, if you're constantly fighting brand battles on PPC and then now LSA gives you a way to just pay to be fixed there. Yeah, so I think it's going to be a little bit of both.
Well, Eric, any final remarks you want to say, or anybody else, Matt, Crystal, Claudia, anything you want to say about anything we've discussed today that hasn't already been talked about?
Please.
No? Okay. Well, thank you all for joining us. Great information, really valuable for people, I think, to hear this and to hear these tactical pieces of advice. So thanks for making yourselves available. Where can people find all of you if they want to follow up and talk to any of you? Claudia, you start.
You can find me on LinkedIn, or just Google Reputation Arm and land on our website.
Okay, Matt.
Yeah, same. LinkedIn or just Google Sterling Sky. And you can find us on there.
Okay, Claudia. Or sorry, not Claudia, Crystal.
Same here. LinkedIn, or you can type in my name and my details will populate in Google search.
Okay, and Eric, last but not least.
You can find us at leadwisehq.com, and really appreciate your guys' time. Thank you again.
Yes. And thanks everybody
Eric.
for listening. Thanks for participating. Thanks for listening. We'll see you next time.